Anekantavad video, sort of, but partially. I mean, I'll use a personal anecdote, to sort of, one of those things that when you have to face the happening, the you're alive thing. He calls it something else. The becoming. Yes, you have to do that becoming thing. Something parallel to it or something. And so, I think when I woke up with a stroke, the day after the stroke, that was a becoming moment. How do you deal with the new world order? What's been dumped in your face, as a reality. The new reality is really shitty. And are you going to find a way to navigate your circumstance? And once you get a couple of days in, you figure out it's not going to get worse, then okay, it gets pretty easy. You gotta, a lot of irritating parts, don't get me wrong. I mean, the whole relearning stuff is really far more obnoxious than I thought. When people talk about rehabilitation, it's a lot nastier, some of it. When you have to relearn something, it's so tedious, just to bend your fingers and stuff, because you really are having to, concentrate intensely, and it's really harsh, nasty. But anyway, you're okay with it mentally, so psychologically you understand this is the circumstance, you do what you have to do, blah blah blah. So yeah, you're done with the becoming part, and you're just doing the what do I have to do part. The written down, this is the book, you read the little book, it says this is what you do when this happens. Everybody does it this way, you just do it this way. Yeah. And part of it makes sense in the sense that you're just because you're broken, you're not necessarily saying I want to be dead. You still got cats to feed and things to do, and you're going to have to learn how to do it. So anyway, I was kind of enjoying this whole birthday thing in a funny way. I don't usually do birthdays at all. I didn't really do it, But I mean, last night I was watching a video and I just decided to do a drawing, and I hadn't done any artwork in forever. And so I thought that was good. It's not bad for an ink drawing, because I'm usually afraid of ink, just because, no erasers allowed and all that kind of stuff. And everything has to be a real line. You can't just imply something. You have to really put a line down. It's a little spooky. What kind of trouble you're going to get into. Too much of a line. Really hard to do the subtleties of who we are in hard lines. A little bit hard anyway. So anyway, and then the fake Sagan provided me with this opportunity to just, do this Christian bashing thing, which is fun, just because Christians are just so fucking annoying, especially the overt lying kind. The old grandmother kind, say, okay, whatever, you just say, well, okay, you just grandmother them out, whatever. And you just say that's a dying breed. But these evangelical types, these fucking arrogant, obnoxious, fascist Christians, you just can't kick them in the nuts too often. And, not that God's not already doing it for us, don't get me wrong. I mean, he is pulling uteruses out and, obviously shrinking testicles. And so he is doing some work. But it doesn't hurt for us to, do a little work too. Just, point it out, making sure everybody understands. I guess that's part of what this relates to. So anyway, I was feeling pretty good about that. Feeling kind of just comfortable, and I made myself a lemon cake. Came out pretty good, sort of from scratch. Well, I mean, sort of from ingredients laying around. None of them happened to be a cake mix, but I actually did make a cake out of it. And it came out good, and I like that. And so everything was, not terrible. And so it's, my birthday, so my sister's birthday is the same time, because, it happens with twins. that, you know, it's on the same day usually, most cases. And, you know, we're having a pleasant enough happy birthday to each other conversation, sort of, kind of, mostly. And you know, just this funny way that it came up that you know, she was ragging because my other sister's ex-husband was doing something on the internet, you know, about this, you know, defending Hillary or something, and she was ragging on that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And I was like, what the fuck? Did you vote for Trump? She voted for Trump. I'm not, you know. And I was like, that was like, what? Oh, I just had a stroke or something. I mean, the world is broken. This can't be possible. I mean, my sister, I had, you know, nothing but admiration. I mean, my twin sister, she's just a tough as nails. Worked as hard as hell at every job she had. Always trying to do the right thing. Always trying to help. Tried to organize a union at work. You know, takes care of old people on the street that nobody else would take care of. Takes in the leftover animals and stuff. I mean, just not a bad frickin' motive inside of her. Not a, you know, just nothing but admiration. And I'm just, how is this possible? I mean, it's not possible. She couldn't possibly do this crazy thing. You know, she has a mixed race kid. Trump. You know, I can't. Yeah, and I'm sitting here just saying this can't be reality. Somebody snuck a different reality in here, and I didn't realize. And this is, you know, some other thing happened, and I don't know. You know, I just, you know, you can't make sense out of it. It's just no. I mean, she's a woman. Who's been underpaid, and she knows it. Trump. I mean, she already, you know, I mean, she, throughout the rest of her life, earlier, she always knew the Republicans aren't going to do anything nice for working people. She knew this. She knew the Republicans were just rich people and religious kooks and racist nuts. She knew that. And somehow Donald Trump was some kind of shining beacon of reason in the Republican Party, promising the biggest tax cut ever for the rich ever. The people who've done the best over the last 40 years, he's going to help them out? Like she hadn't heard that before? Trickle down? Well, anyway. And so, you know, I was like, oh, well, Hillary's a lying cunt. How can you defend her? I'm like, doesn't matter what she is. She's not going to put Scalia on the Supreme Court. She's not going to dig up a fucking lunatic and put him on the Supreme Court. Fuck! And, you know, then I threw in some other kind of shit, and then I was just like, I got to get off the phone. I mean, I can't do this. You know, I can't do it. This isn't acceptable. Happy birthday, goodbye. You know, fuck this. Just, you know, so now I was kind of laughing at Piro, you know, having a family that's, you know, insane. But yeah, it's not a good thing. Now, I am very unhappy with this circumstance. I don't know quite what to do with it still. I'm still sitting there saying, I don't know what to do with this. How do you navigate that? How do you incorporate into your being, you know? Because it seems like a malicious act to me. I just can't see how anybody who cares about working people or fairness or decency in any way whatsoever could possibly vote for Donald Trump. I mean, he is the beacon of greed, selfish, elitism, racism. He's blinking it loud and clear, and he's running as a Republican, which means he'll have the party's support in doing all of those nasty motherfucking things. And so I guess they're just, you know, people just can't get past the simple things. They think that if you're against NAFTA, that means you're going to bring back high wages to America or something. That somehow NAFTA is what ruined wages, and somehow That's all that matters. So as long as you're against that, then somehow we're going to win. That you're going to make America great again. No, you're just going to make America greedy. You're going to make America, you know, stupid. I mean, an idiocracy, because you're not going to be able to do any of this stuff. I mean, if you want to bring the jobs back, you're going to have to lower the wages. So as long as you're willing to work for less money, yeah, then everybody will have more jobs. Maybe you can work 2 or 3 of them. So yeah, more jobs, just lower wages. What a bargain. But I just, you know. So I don't know if there's any point. I mean, now it's way too late. But I mean, I did make some videos. But I mean, I guess this was a real failing of the Democratic Party to explain how, you know, the labor problem is a worldwide problem, and that you can't isolate yourself from the exploitation. The cheaper products are in the world. You can't compete with them. You won't be able to sell your shit anywhere. And you're just kind of deluded if you think you are going to be able to do that. Because you're not. Yeah, plain and simple. We've been out of the game too long, and there's nothing. We have no advantages in terms of any kind of industrial production. It's over. The American car industry got killed, got slaughtered, and we saw what it got replaced with. You know, wages that were half as much, and then we saw that wages were half as much in Mexico, and that's where it's always going to go. You're not going to stop it. No, anyway, it was really quite amazing. So anyway, just one of those shock things. So now Anekantavad says that's fun, I guess. You know, that's the meat of life, is to walk into brick walls. I'd argue that no, it really isn't any fun. I wouldn't want to do it again. So I was sort of, you know, and he's conceding that this conversation is really quite difficult between us because, yeah, we just aren't seeing reality the same way. And I do plan on making videos arguing in defense of these particular axioms, you know, about maybe time being linear, the fact that determinism doesn't mean feudalism, in the sense that the determinism is in this envelope where the function of logic exists, where we can do mathematics, where we can see that the number 4 is bigger than -4, you know, that kind of thing, where we can understand the real relationships, and we can describe them accurately, and that those accurate descriptions are like a map, and that's what we're really talking about. Is he's arguing that life is the same with a map or without a map, and because he's not seeing progress as being a map. He's not seeing progress as being an aid to navigating life, where I certainly would argue exactly the opposite is true. And some of the progress we've made is an example of that, in the sense that we navigate the new map and see drunk driving bad, just makes a mess for no good reason, get rid of that, and the play gets better. The map improves. So yeah, but he just fundamentally disagrees with that kind of concept of an improved vision, improved navigation capacity, improved identification of targets even. All right, but the fundamental question, I guess, would still be, like I said, I would say that this all is a joyride, and you could just say it's a joyride. That's another disagreement we have. He kind of says this is all a joyride being conducted by the people in the present, and they have no obligations to use the knowledge gained in the past to improve the performance in the future. And that's kind of where we're a conduit. If we don't do that, it doesn't get done. The only way the past can be reflected into the future, the knowledge of the past, what's been gained by all the burned fingers, is we have to do it. We have to make it happen in the future by acknowledging the the education we've acquired from the past. So if that's not one of our functions, I'm going to say, well, then we're not functioning. I mean, that's one of the key things, most important things we can do is fulfill that obligation to flip, the past and use it as a map, a piece of structure to give us, to edify us where the bear traps are and to avoid stepping in them. The obvious ones, the grotesque ones, at least, at minimum. All right. Now another point of contention, I mean another, like arguing the speed of light or the fact of consciousness, the fact that it happens in these individual containers, that it's not something the universe is doing, it's something individual brains are doing, all of these arguments. Fundamental to, I guess, the thing that bothers me, okay, like again, like we could have conflict, there's compatible conflict with something he was talking about, but that can only be true if we could agree that there's no stakeholders. Then the conflict becomes almost necessary to some sort of action. Then it's like having a golf game. I mean, what fun is it if you don't, bet $5? Or what fun of it is if it isn't, if you aren't being a little bit conscious of the play, the competition. That sort of improves the fun of it a little. I mean, sometimes it's just for the fun of it, but I'm just saying, even competing with yourself, I mean, all these things are kind of contests with your past performance and measuring against those kind of things. I mean, you don't go bowling and say, I hope I bowl a 42. You just don't. You kind of you kind of want to do something better. You want to improve. And so I would agree, if that's all the stakes were, then there's not much to worry about. But I'm arguing that for a much bigger stake here, so that's why there can't be a compatible kind of conflict, is because there's too much riding on it. And the disagreement is fundamental to the welfare of what I consider to be riding. And I see it in great jeopardy based on this conflict, being placed in unnecessary jeopardy even. The very idea of the jeopardy is a consequence of the conflict. So anyway, so that's why it's more important, obviously, to me than to him, because I'm seeing the value riding on it at stake. All right, so I'm getting there. So another argument to be had is because he's sort of fundamentally, what Anekantavad is saying is that there is an intrinsic good. There is something too precious to sacrifice. That's why you can't just let it go. And this intrinsic good would be in the form of this desire mechanism and this special thing that happens of the gratification of a desire. And that this is in and of itself a true positive. I would argue that obviously it's not a true positive. It's certainly positive in the fact that once you have the pre-existing condition of the desire, you have the necessary circumstance of its gratification. If it's not gratified, it's going to be bad. So you do need to satisfy it once it exists. But the argument really is, does it really need to exist? And is its gratification really purely good? And I guess I would argue that the mechanism that makes us hungry, or the mechanism that makes us thirsty, does so by creating this whip, and that we're really being gratified by the removal of the whip. So the whip is the tension and the irritation and the frustrations that build up in us, and we are relieved of some of that by the lemon cake. By the treat. And so the treat isn't intrinsically valuable. It's only valuable incidentally. Once you've already created a mess, then the broom and the dustpan are necessary. But without a mess, a broom and a dustpan can't be valuable. And so this mechanism of gratification, although powerful, is still dependent on a highly negative pre-existing circumstance and can't be considered a pure or intrinsic good. It's only a consequential good. Consequence being removing of the negative sensations that are enjoyably removed. But I'd argue that that's one of these fundamental issues, is that if we are actually creating something that's a pure good, like a pure kind of diamond or something, some sort of essence of pure goodness by our activity on earth, and it's not just a perception of good, it's not just because we think it's good or because we want it, it's because it actually is good, then you'd have an argument to make. Then you could have something you could place on the scale and say, okay, here's a true good, an actual good. And so I've used analogies like, well, the only way I can make a good is I have to give the universe cancer and you have to cure it. And then you're valuable, then you're necessary. But it's really hard for me to imagine what this pure good would be outside of the context of a desire mechanism. You have to first make the deprivation, and that's the trick of it. I mean, I can't really think how can you possibly take a blank space and create a true good in it. You can imagine creating the true bad, in that all I have to do is create the needing thing. I just create the hungry human, or the starving rabbit, or the diseased creature. And then I have created the necessity of a repair. I've created the necessity of a comfort to elevate it. Okay, I've created the deficit that now needs to be we need to find a profit to fix. But I can't imagine it any other way. I can't imagine the inverse circumstance. I can't imagine the unconnected to some other circumstance, the intrinsic good. I just can't create one of those in my imagination. I can't imagine what that'd be made out of. Just as I can't imagine my sexual desire without my sexual deprivation. It's all got to be connected, and it seems kind of obvious that it works that way. You got to make it hungry. So that might be a subject worth pursuing, just because it's sort of fundamental to this idea of procreating. I mean, I'm not sure that he cares, because he's still going to say the moment has the urgency, and therefore the moment is the one that matters. So he's like fake Sagan. He's kind of saying now trumps the other manifestations of now. The one that's actually now, okay, this event, is somehow trumps the events that happen on some other piece of the timeline. Like I said, from my perspective, it doesn't matter about the past. So the only one you can trump is the future. That branch is the only branch you have access to trumping, and the interests of. And that's where we just fundamentally disagree. I don't. How does this event of me doing this, living, trump if I was toxic in some way? If I was a typhoid Mary, and I was going to be toxic to many millions in the future, how would my needs, my one little individual needs to do something, how are they not trivialized by the weight of the whips that will be snapped because of my gratification, that kind of thing. I mean, that was the crime of typhoid Mary, was, she loved being a housekeeper and a cook, and she just couldn't let it go, even though she was a passive carrier of this horrible disease. And I think the logic says, no, you don't. You don't satisfy your desire to have the family say, what a lovely meal, when you're going to kill them all. Doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And I don't think it's logical to impose life when you're conceding how difficult it is, how dangerous it is, and how, in a sense, futile it is, and that you won't survive it. It will kill you, and in a sense it's going to kill the meaning of everything on the timeline. The past, the present, and the future will all be made moot, in the sense that they can't possibly have a purpose. They can't possibly be the foundation for some other appliance we're making. They can't possibly be the clock for the washing machine, or they won't be the constituent to anything. So all that was sacrificed to make us here, to get us here, is for nothing. Because the part that is here, that is us, that is our surviving 4 billion years of evolution, is not going to be used. It's just going to sit on the shelf and degrade and rot and turn to dust. So anyway, that's probably enough of a video. So, a strange week, and then a strange end to the week, a strange day, and I still got to get through Thanksgiving, for fuck's sake. Ugh. Horrible, horrible, awful, awful. Terrible. Miserable. Anyway. Shit. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's a good enough expression.